Manoj Mathur. Architect Manoj Mathur is a professor of architecture in SPA New Delhi. He graduated from SPA in 1982 and soon after started his practice in the firm Studio Plus. Later, he was the founder and principal of the firm Mathur and Capre Associates, which has a portfolio of important public projects to its credit. He started teaching as a hobby in 1984 and in 1990 he joined as a permanent faculty in SPA, his alma mater, where he headed the Department of Architecture, Industrial Design and Urban Design in various tenures. He is keenly interested in history of architecture as a profession, adaptive reuse and upcycling of buildings, urban health and biophilic design. Besides teaching and practice, he has been doing things like art direction, assistant for the movie Maase Saheb and other such of offbeat pursuits. He is associated with the Modern Asian Architecture Network, India chapter, and presently the Joint Honorary Secretary of the Indian Institute of Architects Northern Chapter, New Delhi, India. Let us now proceed to Architect Manoj Mathur's presentation.
Greetings to all our viewers today, and thanks for joining in. I'm Manoj Mathur, Professor of Architecture at the School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, where I have been a student since 1975 and teaching since 1984. I have also been in practice till about 12 years ago, and from that I have now retired. We did some interesting projects during that time. Prominent ones are the Sai Baba Temple redevelopment at Shirdi, the All India Institute of Medical Sciences at Jodhpur, the flyover at AIIMS, New Delhi. And we also had the thrill of doing the first of its kind conversion of a single screen cinema into a multiplex at the PVR Anupam, Saket, New Delhi. A lot of our practice has been about old buildings, about extending them, about upgrading them, breathing new life into them, which took us far afield from the architecture school design experience. And that is the springboard for my presentation today. But before I go any further, I would like to say something about Icon Best 2021. I congratulate the School of Architecture and Interior Design, SRM Institute of Science and Technology, for creating this extraordinary platform of cerebral exchange, gathering ideas from across the world and sharing them with students, with teachers, researchers, professionals, and also the corporate world. This is the first of a series, and I believe this event is going to be the most awaited one in our annual calendar. I'm so proud to be at this podium. I will begin my presentation. Learning to unbuild. There is no play of words here. Quite simply, it is a call to prepare for a task which is the exact opposite of what we think is our core competence. This is an invocation of our survival instinct. We have to learn new tools, new tricks to stay relevant in society, and most importantly, to stop causing unintended harm to the environment. In India today, many buildings built 50 to 60 years ago are near the end of their life, structurally or functionally. They are going to be demolished. They will be replaced with bigger and better buildings sooner or later. I share my thoughts about the way they are pulled down, what are the consequences to the environment, what could be a better alternative, and where do we begin? We saw this happen at the Pragati Maidan, New Delhi, A few years ago, the Hall of Nations was brought down in a matter of minutes. And this was an icon of Make in India architecture. Just a few weeks back, we could push back a similar fate for the incomparable buildings at IIM Ahmedabad. At least for the time being, we have saved them. But we are aiming to be a $5 trillion economy in a very short time. And for that, we will be making and breaking a whole lot more. We will extract more minerals from the ground for our cement, sand, steel, aluminium, bricks, glass, and of course the coal and the oil. But the supply is not infinite, and it is progressively getting harder to reach. How long can our resources last? How long can we sustain this way of building? Sustainability is the catchword today in architects' offices, but the reality is different. For conscience keeping, we have devised metrics which console us that our buildings are sustainable. But actually, these ratings measure how relatively unsustainable our buildings are. We learn how to build so that we can comply with these goals. But these are just baby steps. Real sustainability is quite far. These are some of the most highly rated sustainable buildings in India today. Do we see anything different here? Anything which shows us a way to build in the future, which will be less resource intensive? No. The message is that it is business as usual. Nothing has changed. What we are missing out on is the ultimate demise of these buildings, a fact which we do not contemplate and the rating systems do not capture. This is a picture we have seen recently. A ship which was once the proud leader of the Indian Navy standing forlorn in the waters outside Alang. After its second innings, INS Vikrant finally is being broken down. It's a sad moment, but it is an inevitable event. After this, all its remains will be transferred to other uses. It happens to all the ships. But we do not think of buildings in the same way. We do not bother about this because our work stops when a building is up and running. But if the building was not to stay forever, then how should it end? For 50 years, we have chattered about this simple 3-word mantra: reduce, reuse, recycle. Yet, we do very little about it in our design practice. In our studios, we are still stuck with form follows function. Even after sustainability has become such an issue, it is still not the essential basis of our design concepts. It is an extra layer, a veneer. That is to say, or rather, that's not to say that there are things happening in practice, notable exceptions. But we wish that they were the rule. For the rest of us, the alternatives were always clear, but our gaze was unseeing. Why? One of the major reasons could be our conditioning at architecture school. When creativity is underlined as the bedrock of our work, with so much emphasis always being new and different, we get kitted out as creators or makers. We come to believe that there will be an endless demand for more buildings, waiting for architects to create them. That is what we train for. We obsess with building new buildings on clean sites. We lionize originality, but we end up doing mostly the same things. So here is my proposition. Positive changes in our built environment will not come without repurposing the architect's education to prioritize the attainment of sustainable development goals as the primary objective. At least the 5 sustainable development goals most relevant to our domain require a strong push of capacity building to get architects to deal with them proactively and have some kind of long-term impact. How do we begin? We need to make a fresh start. Let us begin with reduce. Let us build less. The smartphone is a great inspiration. As the size of the telephone has reduced, its range of functions has grown. Similarly, in our architectural education, let us incentivize miniaturization and convergence. There are so many parallels in these two examples of frugality: frugality of space, frugality of material, and of the convergence of so many different functions into a small space. Between the two extremes of Dharavi and Tokyo, even when the context is so different, we can see that the core issues of design remain the same: economy and efficiency. This is the 6-yard house of New Delhi, which created quite a sensation in the news media. People connect with such things because they touch their everyday lives. Yet, would we do such an exercise in school? Very unlikely. Instead, it will be cited as an example of all the things not to do, because the space standards are wrong, because it is structurally unsound, or there are legal transgressions, or there are social issues of proximity, so on. So this is even better. This was the hot WhatsApp forward of 2020. Arun Prabhu has managed a remarkable feat of miniaturizing and convergence. This contraption, besides being a home for two persons, also moves around. So from becoming a place to live in, it could easily become a place to work in, like a vending station, if it was parked in the wrong, if in the parked in the right place. That's yet another layer of convergence. In the tech-enabled post-pandemic environment, many of our space conventions and standards could change. Some types may reduce or even disappear, and some new typologies may emerge. We have learned to optimize our space with the help of folding furniture, folding partitions, folding walls, and new devices like the work from home tent. Less is more has come into everybody's homes, but it should ideally come from our architecture schools and become aspirational in the public perception. That's the only way it can be ingrained in the architectural profession. When an object stops being useful, it is replaced by a gleaming new object suited for some new purpose. But can the old object mutate into a new one? This opens the door for the second alternative, reuse. Carl Elephant, the president of the American Institute of Architects in 2018, has said, the greenest building is the one that's already built. It has already added to the carbon footprint. The environmental price has already been paid. Wouldn't it make a lot of sense to use it thoroughly so that we can extract the best result out of it? Why spend on a new building if we can remodel an old one? If we must contain the spread of our cities, the urban sprawl, we should redeploy our building inventory and selectively redensify the inner core if necessary. It certainly helps if we can find disused or underused buildings to convert. Ricardo Bofill the Senior took the initiative many decades ago and inspired many architects to follow his lead. That in turn impressed many clients to think differently. And on a positive note, we can say that this was one good thing which happened. Across the world, industrial buildings were built tough. They have lasted longer than their designed function and are now finding more interesting public uses. These buildings have the charm of history. More and more, they are being transformed as places for the arts, as if to compensate for the hard life in their previous avatar. Retrofitting becomes fashionable here at Gucci's headquarters in Milan. Besides becoming lifestyle statements, makeovers like Vikroli Social at Mumbai make a lot of commercial sense too. They also upgrade their sooty neighborhoods. This castle in Spain, in the town of Baena, when it ended its first life as a military establishment, got a second one as a water supply facility, a water tank, sitting at the highest elevation in the town. Now, when it has outgrown the second one also, it has got a third life for being just what it is, a survivor of the golden olden period. Very sensitively, the conservationist has given the old core a new armature on which new public activities can be mounted. What is it going to be? We don't know. Awestruck, the city is still undecided how best to use it. It is so good. As it happens, alteration and addition is a booming business, vertical, at par with new buildings in intensity, if not in value. Likewise, in the classroom, the same basic principles which inform new building design should be exercised for retrofitting of old buildings and grafting additions onto them. Professionally, it is a very useful skill and mostly acquired by unlearning after graduation. However, there is an elephant in the room. There is a dilemma we do not want to talk about. We are so deeply invested in the personality of our designs, how our baby is going to be, that we shudder to think of its demise, that someday it might cease to be. Maybe that's the reason why industrial and military buildings are so amenable to retrofit, because they are impersonal. They are nobody's baby. Times have changed. Buildings today are not just shells. They are no longer inert monoliths, frozen music to be admired in sunlight and enlivened by tourist footfalls. They are more machine like, complex products of many technologies. Unfortunately, they will also reach an end of life beyond which extension will be unviable. But unlike the ships at Alang, we cannot easily break up contemporary buildings because of the way we build them. Unlike ship breaking, building breaking is utterly wasteful. This is a picture etched in our memories. We dread this eventuality. But there comes a time when it is the only right thing to do. And this is our own ego. The reasons are different, but the outcome is the same. This is all expertly done to cause no harm to anyone, no damage to any property. But what of the environment? That was to be saved by this demolition. But is it really saved? That's a question we should ask. Urban skylines are dotted with tower cranes, but the ground is blotted with heaps of construction and demolition debris. The debris has a nasty habit, it does not vanish. It just shifts to a landfill site, which is probably a precious lowland for aquifer recharge. The earth is done for. Take it or leave it. How big is this problem? We don't have data for India, but we may look at some telling graphics by Daniel Marshall in their paper, Computational Arrangement of Demolition Debris, where they have analyzed the situation in the United States. The demolition debris produced in New York is represented as a pyramid, a hill. See the size of the debris hill in comparison to the Empire State Building. See how much it has grown between 1990 and 2015. Today, it stands at 720 meters compared to 440 meters to the tip of the Empire State Building. Highlighting the enormity of the problem, the paper also suggests a logistic solution. It shows how even random pieces of debris can be recomposed to create new wall and roof elements. But more interesting is the idea of a store or an exchange where they can be deposited till somebody buys them off for their new buildings. These stores are just like any other retail outlets with fancy lighting and window display, if you may. Sure, it would make a lot more sense to cut the building into standard size rectangular pieces instead of actually breaking it, as we can see with the saw going over this domino house. If thinking of the death of one's baby was difficult. Dismembering its parts and selling them off is unthinkable. But we can disengage from the object and focus on its matter. If a material refuses to die, or it should not be returned to the womb of Mother Earth, then it would be better that it lived on. Let us think of it like an organ bank. At the end of a building's useful life, it may be only that particular assemblage of its parts which may become dysfunctional. The parts themselves may live longer if they are not destroyed by the crude process of demolition. In opting to recycle, our designs can script in the demise of a building and its transition to a new life as a cycle of building and unbuilding. But we carry existential baggage. The problem of unbuilding, nurtured in our design learning, must be proactively, forcefully eased out. If the entire building is not reusable, it can still yield some components which can be reused. But the stigma of second hand will not go away. So what do? This is another alternative. We can crush that building, and with the debris, we can make raw material for absolutely new building parts. Even this could give us tremendous environmental saving with less mining for materials and less energy consumed in converting them into building parts. But what if there was a third way in which we could salvage everything from a dismantled building? Design for disassembly or DFD can be a game changer. If incorporated in our design concepts, it can take us across the old versus new divide. Obviously, disassembling a building in an orderly manner to recover all of its parts has much to do with how it is put together in the first place. It is just like Lego bricks. Porta cabins we have been using for a long time. These temporary structures are built and taken down quickly to be moved to a new location and re-erected again. We make them look like they are permanent. But somewhere along the line, we forgot that even permanent structures can be made that way. By itself, it is not a new concept. It is quite ancient, predating the ubiquity of cement mortar. Our magnificent edifices have been created without mortar, with excellent dry joints that speak of the superior craftsmanship and metallurgy that we had in the olden days. Thanks to this, entire temples have been moved piece by piece from one location to another and saved from submergence in dam waters, like at the Sri Sailam Reservoir in Telangana and the Aswan Dam in Egypt. Adam Hardy has conjectured a reconstruction of a temple from only its scattered remains by deciphering the key to fitting and joining the stones. Even when it was not a design intent to dismantle this temple or to rebuild it, it has been proved here that it can be put together back again. Such is the inherent simplicity of the technique. This is like eternal sustainability. If our building designs could be embedded in a circular economy, we can use resources for as long as possible, extract the maximum value from them during their useful life, then recover products and regenerate materials at the end of each life cycle. The carbon investment already made in processing them pays back repeatedly when building components can be assembled and disassembled with equal ease to be used in different buildings over time. Let us see what is the state of art today. Some architects are showing the way forward. We aim to be thinking of the next 5 projects these materials could construct while we are designing. So says Anders Lendager of the Lendager Group Copenhagen, who do a lot of work on sustainable architecture. This is one of their examples, the resource rose, Orestaden, Denmark. And you can see how recycled materials have been used to produce wall panels. This is a process fully integrated in their design build approach. Kengo Kuma has spent a lifetime fighting against the tyranny of cement and concrete with alternatives based more on natural materials. This is showcased in the ICU Physical Education Center at Tokyo. This building is made almost entirely of wood, parts joined with nuts and bolts, skillfully concealed with meticulous detailing. It can be taken apart just the way it was put together. To relate more to our mainstream architectural work with multiple floors, large floor plates, light wells, staircases, etc., we have Rao Architects Triodos Bank Building at Zeist, Netherlands. It is a manifestation of an unusual meeting of minds between the architects and the client, who is a major financier of sustainability projects. This informs all aspects of the design, starting from the choice of the site itself. If God is in the details, Rao architects show the direction where to go to find him. The details take on an entirely new set of challenges for civilized unbuilding. For end of life disassembly, they have made a catalog of all the parts, including every single screw, all 165,312 of them. Loads of work, but it is worth it. I urge that in our studios at school, we look at architectural design in more holistic terms, end to end, cradle to cradle, with the life in between marked by flexibility, adaptability, and responsibility to the environment. We spend all the time in figuring out how to build the building. Just as much attention could be given to how it will be unbuilt. We can turn the tide towards real sustainability only when we achieve the critical mass of architects educated in this progressive ethos. A student's introduction to architecture should no longer be as a self-indulgent expression of individual creativity, but as a much more responsible medium to help humanity live in harmony with nature. Otherwise, we will be like this only. Thank you.
Thank you, Architect Manoj Mathur, for your insightful presentation, and I'm certain that the audience found it to be a very informative presentation. Now we shall take a short break for our sponsor video, post which we shall proceed to our next speaker, Architect Srinivas Murthy.
This is Amit, and I am a proprietor of Metro Books, and our firm is a 12-year-old firm located in Delhi, and we have our head office in Delhi, and we have our two branch offices. One is in Pune and another one is in Chennai. So we are dealing in architecture and engineering books, and our core specialization is for engineering books, engineering and architecture books. We have our specialization in architecture planning, interior design, animation, facility design planning, digital architecture and construction project management, urban design, etc. So as you see, there are different books we have in our offices. So let me tell you, explain you the different books here. Like we have books for different publishers like Thames, Anderson, Lawrence King, etc., MIT Press. So you can see here in this rack that like all these books are very basic books, and most of the books are into various universities syllabus, and also there are some civil titles are also there, like the Sears one, like the passive and low energy, and you can again see here some very basic books required for all universities, and you can see here the books in this rack is for Wiley, and this is a US based publisher, very renowned publisher, and publishing books on various subjects, and very famous books they have published so yet, and we are directly procuring from this publisher. And in this rack you can see the Rutledge publisher. This publisher is from UK, and again a very renowned publisher in the field of engineering and architecture subject. So they also publish on all the subject like planning, urban design, interior design, fashion, animation, photography, etc. Like again you can see some books published by Indian publishers in this rack, and these are the very basic books published by different publishers. So we are also doing publishing for architecture books, and we deal in architecture books, and you can see these are the books by Design Media, and again this is a very famous publisher for design books and architecture books. And like I have told you that we are into the publishing field also, and we have published few titles on architecture subject, and some more titles also we are going to publish in next year, and this year also we are going to publish few titles, and we are still working on those titles to get it published within this year. Like one is for planning, and other one is for architecture, and one is for history of architecture. So these are the fields which we are planning this year. And you can see here the books based on design. This is again a very famous publisher for design books, and name of the publisher is Sandpoints. So that's this publisher is from China, and again you can see some more books for Link publishers, and that is again also a US publisher. Again you can see some book published by a publisher, and you can see some Archibald books are also there. That's again a very Korean publisher. Again some books are for links or different on housing, digital architecture, on housing roofs, etc. And here you can see the books for European publishers. So all these books are for European publishers. So these are the books I have just shown you, and we are try to cover each and every subject relating to architecture, especially in publishing also. So that's all from my side. Thank you.